KJ Wright on with Brock and Salk this morning had some interesting comments, Dave. You and I certainly, and everybody at the station, has spent a lot of time talking about DK Metcalf and his comments, prior to last weekend's game where, we had the Pete comments about, having the board with the penalties on it, and he was at the top of the board, and then there was a cut of DK going, I don't care. He can write what he wants. That's just the board or something like that. And we'll go back to what he had to say. But kind of wrote it off like, all right, whatever. He's speaking one way to the media. Certainly behind the scenes, he's having a different conversation. But maybe that's not the case. If you listen to KJ, he had some very interesting comments. And first off here, he just said basically didn't like hearing his comments about that penalty board.
I'm at a loss for words right now. It's just a bore to me. This is a coach that's leading your team, that's addressing this, that's trying to get you on the same page and really trying to take this football team in the right direction. This is what he didn't bash you. He didn't call you out like I would have probably did. I would probably went a completely different way. He's professional about it. He put it on the board like he's done in the past. I said he should do this like he's done it in the past. And to say that, for that to come out of your mouth, that hurt. That really hurt. That was hard to hear.
I like how you said he didn't bash you like I probably would have done.
Yeah.
I think we know if KJ were head coach, Dave, he'd be ruling with an iron fist. He doesn't seem to tolerate much nonsense.
No, he doesn't. He doesn't suffer fools gladly. I like that about KJ. And, and I don't think it's because KJ is a hard ass or anything like that. I just think it's because he understands, and we'll hear from him talk about it, but, he played for a decade for this team and for Pete. And Pete really, and I think what we're going to find out a little bit is something I think I brought up before. It's just kind of a sense that I had that I think has been confirmed. And that's that don't go thinking that Pete Carroll is this new age, everybody's okay type of coach. He is, he has to rule with, like KJ, an iron fist. I mean, you have to. You have all these personalities, and everything always goes back to protect the team.
Well, let's just a tail on that. Let's hit cut number 3 there, where he's talking about KJ talking about Pete saying he can be lethal and cold-blooded when he needs to.
Understand this, Salk. That man I talk to every Monday. He come put on those glasses. He sit with his legs crossed. He's Mr. Peaceful, Mr. Protect the Team guy. Understand this. This man can be lethal. He can be cold-blooded when he needs to be. He handles business when it's time to handle business. Don't let that Mr. Nice Guy stuff fool you. This man is a businessman, and he puts the team before anybody. And if he feels like, because he's seen it before, if he sees like, if he feels these guys aren't respecting what I'm saying, they're going against the grain, they're not protecting the team, he's the head coach for a reason. He's been there for 13, 14 years for a reason. And so he's in back, he's watching, he's taking notes. I'm taking notes, I'm watching, and at any moment something presents itself, it will get handled. And so trust and believe that.
That he's cold-blooded and can be lethal when he needs to be. That's certainly not an element of Pete Carroll that I think anybody on the outside would ever expect to be part of his personality.
Well, and kind of, I think, the connotation of cold-blooded is typically that he's just nasty and mean. He doesn't mean it in that way. I think he means it in a way that, all football players know that a head coach has to be that way. Chuck was that way. He had those steely blue eyes. They'd stare right through you. And, if you got to a point where you pissed him off or, you did something that he didn't like, yeah, it's time. And, again, there's this perception that Pete's the new age guy that's not going to, rule his team like most old school coaches do. And I don't even think it's old school. It's just the way you have to be as a head coach. And I've always said this about a head coach. And I'm totally agreeing with KJ Wright about this. And we'll get into, kind of some of the stuff that DK, his behavior and whatnot. But that's just what you have to do as a head coach in the NFL. And what he means is in the right way. Like, it's number one, protect the team, right? That's the number one rule. There's also no whining, be early, those kinds of things, but protect the team is number one.
Well, and I think, the perception is one thing. We see Pete as this friendly old grandfather out there running around with the big white shoes on and chewing gum and, everything's great, Mr. Optimism. But if you really give it thought, you're like, he can't just be, hey, be you, DK, be you, Sherm, be you, Marshawn, and do whatever you want. And we'll all coalesce together here, and it'll come together just fine. I've got faith in it. No, he's not going to – he's going to be that guy to a point, but he's got to establish, I'm in control here. Right? He's not going to let anybody run roughshod over him. He's got to have that respect of the locker room. So the idea that that's just who he is, all flowery 24/7, yeah, I don't know that KJ Wright's breaking news, but maybe for some people they're kind of like, oh, well, we've only experienced one version of Pete in the public, which is always very optimistic, never throwing anybody under the bus, never, tearing into a player, as KJ said he would. He's very consistent in that display of his personality. But behind closed doors, he's got to be the guy that says, look, the buck stops with me, and here's what I'll tolerate, and here's what I won't. And to this point, he's been incredibly successful, and he's managed those egos and personalities and giving them a certain amount of freedom at the same time. But this cut here from KJ, we'll talk about it. I think it's a very interesting comment from him in cut number 2 here.
And understand this. I played in this franchise for a decade, 10 years. At the end of the day, they are not afraid, they're not shy to make a move to make sure that no one is above this brand. No one in that building is above that Seahawks brand. I say that with as much respect as possible. If you don't fall in line, let's call it what it is. If you don't fall in line, if you don't buy in, I saw them get rid of guys that bought in. I'm not saying that DK is going to leave or get cut, released, traded, or whatever. With that message, if that continues and they feel like, oh, it's not respected, what I'm saying, I've seen it done before.
Yeah, and he said, I think he meant to say there, he's seen players get cut that didn't buy in. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I heard a story in the beginning, and I can't remember if it was a seating chart or whatever, but it was like, this is what I want done. And the players that didn't get it done were like cut the next day. And that was like early on for Pete, because he had to establish who are the guys that are gonna protect the team and fall in line and put it first.